Hi everyone, welcome to Barter Hordes. This is Robert. I'm back today with a mini review of the last two books that I've read. The first one is a relatively new novel, came out in the fall, October I believe. It's from my October Book of the Month Club box that I kind of forgot about and just now got back to. Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan. Many of you have probably read something by Jennifer Egan. She was really popular for A Visitor from the Goon Squad several years ago, and I read that too. I wasn't a big fan of it. I was kind of in the minority on this book. I found it pretty forgettable, and in fact today I can't tell you what it was about. And so I was a little bit less enthusiastic about picking up Manhattan Beach, which may be why it's sat on my desk since October. But I did finally pick it up, and I'm pleased to say that I actually really enjoyed it. It's a historical novel, which of course is going to appeal to me. It's set in the Depression leading up to World War II. It's set in an area of New York that includes Manhattan Beach, a small area. I'm not that familiar with Manhattan geography. But it's a story of a young girl in, I think it's like 1935 when it starts. Her name is Anna, and her father, for lack of other work during the Depression, has become a bagman for a local hood, a local gangster. And Eddie, her father, has taken Anna with him along on a lot of these meetings where he has to deliver a message or pick up something and run errands. This particular gangster that he works for always wants other family members on these trips to keep everything kind of low-key and no one gets worked up about anything. And then after a few years, Eddie just disappears. There's no explanation. We know that he's been working for a gangster, so the reader suspects that maybe he's dead. We don't really know. We're kept in the dark too. And Anna and her mother and her invalid sister go on about life as well as they can, and to help make ends meet, Anna starts working at the Brooklyn Naval Yard. She's working as a parts inspector on one of the assembly production lines for a huge battleship. And over the course of several months, she's intrigued by the divers she sees taking on this giant suit, going underwater and working on ships there, and she gradually becomes a diver herself, which is really unusual. Women were simply not allowed to dive. That men were so patronizing that they wouldn't even give them the opportunity to try it. But she persisted and became an accomplished diver. And then she crosses paths again with the gangster her father was working for, Dexter Stiles, and develops some kind of a really bizarre relationship with him and starts to try to find out what happened to her father. And this book is the recounting of that adventure to try to understand her past, what her father was like, what happened to him, and there is some twists in this, and there's some mystery towards the end even. And I just found it a pretty compelling story. It was very interesting. The only flaw, and I'm not sure it's a flaw, the only thing I didn't love about the book is that there's a pretty massive cast of characters, and not many of them get developed. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I found it personally a little distracting trying to remember which character was which, who belonged to whom, and so on. And I found that a little bit frustrating and maybe a little bit unnecessary. But overall, I thought it was a really compelling book. Quite different from what I remember A Visit from the Goon Squad feeling like when I was reading that. So I applaud Jennifer Egan for having a range of different styles and approaches. And so I'm looking forward to whatever she comes out with next. So that one's Manhattan Beach. The other book that I've read since my last video is my nonfiction selection for January, and that's Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann. It's a history. It's also a mystery. It's a little bit of everything kind of mixed in together, and it's a very compelling read. I read through this one fairly quickly. Back when the government was still moving Native American nations, tribes, around to different places, the Osage Indians got shoved off of their native lands, and eventually they got parked on a reservation in northern Oklahoma basically because the government assumed the land wasn't worth anything, and let's put them there. You know, they don't deserve any better. Well, sucks to be the government, but in this particular case, they are sitting on one of the largest oil deposits in the country. And as a result, the Osage Nation became extraordinarily wealthy. The payments to the members of the tribe who were on the rolls at the time of the oil strikes all received mineral rights, head rights is what they were called. And they received automatic payments that were extremely valuable. And so the whole nature of the nation's culture changed somewhat because of this extraordinary wealth, but it also brought with it the cost of every corrupt or shady person from the white culture around them tried to steal from them and did so. And then it started in the 1920s, it started to get out of hand, and the Indians were actually being killed for the head rights. White people would marry an Indian, kill their spouse, and then inherit the head rights. And this was going on over and over again, and no one was doing anything about it because the entire society was corrupt from top to bottom. Law enforcement wouldn't do anything. The court system wouldn't do anything. The politicians wouldn't do anything. Ultimately, the tribe appealed to the federal government, and they sent some investigators who bungled the job terribly. And then it got to the point where J. Edgar Hoover sent some of his best agents to try to solve this because he was trying to make a name for himself and his new bureau. It wasn't the FBI then, but as a result of these cases, it became the FBI and became a national law enforcement agency. So this book is as much a story of the murders, the Osage Murders, as it is a history of the birth of the FBI as we know it today. The sad thing is that when it was all finished, only a fraction of the cases had actually ever been tried. No one had gone after most of the murders. The FBI identified only 24 official Osage murders, but the number was probably in the hundreds. And so it's one of those reads that you finish and you're just so outraged on behalf of everyone who did not get any justice that this book is really a compelling read. When I was young, my mother used to take my brothers and me to the local public library when I was in elementary school. We'd go on Saturdays and stack up on books. And I remember for a period, I was probably in 4th or 5th or 6th grade at the time, and I started reading a lot of biographies of Native Americans. I'm not really sure why, I enjoyed one of them, and just as a creature of habit, I went back for more of them. And I remember the same feeling reading a lot of their stories and how they were treated by the U.S. government. And that feeling came back to me reading this book because it's just so painful to see what that society did to the entire Osage Nation just out of pure greed and prejudice. It's a devastating story, but it's really worth reading. It's understandable why this one has been so popular and why it's on all the bestseller lists. You should check this out if you're interested in history or nonfiction at all. Okay, those are the two that I read recently. I say usually, I've only done 4 or 5 of these videos, but I usually tell you what I'm in the process of starting to read next, and I can't do that because I haven't picked a title yet. So that's going to be my task for this evening, is picking a title to read next. And I'll be back with you in a week or so with a couple more reviews. Until then, leave me a comment below if you've read these, or if you're interested in these. Please subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.